Okay, good afternoon, everybody. Thanks for the introduction, Ron. And hoping my slides pop up in a moment here. But as Ron said, my name is Jack Dashwood. I'm the Marcom Director for Movidius. And we're going to talk today about what I've termed the enterprise cop-out. And here we go. So for the first slide, I want to quickly do the company pitch. And I promise this is the only slide pitching my company. But I want you to understand that we, as a company, have skin in the game. So what Movidius does is that we try to bring ultra-low power machine or computer vision to embedded devices, and we're delivering this through a chip which we call the Myriad 2 vision processing unit, and it's capable of running extremely complex vision algorithms at very, very low power. So some of our customers are the people that you might find in making devices today, like Google. We have a partnership with them. Can't mention specifics, but there's some exciting stuff coming out in the near future. Companies like FLIR Systems, the thermal imaging company, they use our chip in what's been termed a system on sensor. So they have thermal imaging sensors with built-in visual intelligence. So things like visual analytics, pedestrian detection, object classification, right on the sensor itself. And I don't know if there's any drone fans out here, but DJI, the world leader in drones, their flagship, the Phantom 4, is now using a Myriad 2 VPU for things like sense and avoid, optical follow me mode, and some other autonomous flight features. So, it's really important to us that augmented reality, both on the consumer side and on the enterprise side, is very successful. We want everyone here to be selling tons of great services, tons of headsets, and hopefully with our chip inside. But that being said, I think that we have some challenges ahead of us, and I think one of them is a narrative which I refer to as the enterprise cop-out. So first I'm going to define what I mean by this and talk a little bit about some of the amnesia we've seen over the years in augmented reality narratives. I'm going to talk about some hidden challenges that we don't talk about and that we should be talking about a little bit more, I think. And lastly, like I said, our skin is in the game. Why are we still optimistic? Why are we here talking about the potential of AR in the enterprise space? So what do I mean by the enterprise cop-out? Well, what it basically means is it's the practice of explaining away serious limitations or bottlenecks as being unnecessary or even appropriate for enterprise. So let's take some examples. Okay, is your device too expensive? Well, enterprise customers have large budgets. It's not a problem. Is it too bulky? Well, enterprise customers, these guys are wearing hard hats and utility belts, so we can strap on all sorts of hardware, and it's not a big deal. Limited versatility. Well, we can have laser-focused use cases for certain verticals in industry, and everything will be okay. So in other words, we're seeing enterprise in some cases as an easy way out rather than a unique market with its own specific challenges involved. Now, this is not to say that enterprise is an important area. It's hugely important, and there's a lot of potential for us to service enterprise customers. But what we really need to be cognizant of is, as a customer, as an investor, or even as a company, are we making an enterprise pivot, or are we making an enterprise cop-out? Here's an Apparel Industry, and I think you can kind of see the dangers here. You see some devices here, which you don't really see very many of today, some early companies that were heavily invested in enterprise, and I think if you look at these devices in terms of form factor features and compromises, they fell victim to an enterprise cop-out. There were major sore points in these devices that for years and years and years were hidden by the fact that they were good enough for some enterprise use cases, and then when uncompromising device came out, they lost market share. And if you think about how many people in this room are carrying around a Palm or an HP or even a BlackBerry device, I think that you are very much in the minority. So just a sort of story to be wary of. We've seen victims of the enterprise cop-out in the past, and we need to make sure that we're not some of them in the AR space. So why do we not really talk about these issues that I'm alluding to so much? Well, there's a lot of potential in augmented reality, and there's a lot of optimism. In the 1990s, we saw a lot of very, very early work from Boeing on assisting technology. Companies like Volkswagen have had very ambitious projects. They've shown, like Marta, in 2012. Google Glass, I think we're all familiar with Google Glass. And even as recently as the last sort of 12 months, we're seeing companies like Microsoft showing some great potential of this technology in the form of concept videos or brief demos. But we sort of seem to forget. We get excited every time, and we say, AR is going to be this amazing transformative technology. But we rarely see this materialize into actual deployed enterprise solutions. They normally seem to remain in pilot projects or proof of concept demos. And I think that this is happening because we're not spending enough time addressing three major challenges, which I'm going to talk about right now. So the first challenge is the concept, the content gap. So I'm sure you're all familiar with the image on the left of the screen. This is a sort of typical booth demo where you've got a car or some other kind of object. You're performing a task on it, and you have the aid of a tablet, which is using some pretty cool computer vision algorithms and some nice 3D graphics to take you step by step through a process. So I'm removing this screw here, and I'm unplugging this cord there, and 3 steps later, I've replaced a headlight assembly. Fantastic, that's great. I see the power of AR. But let's think about that. For those 8 steps, someone had to hand animate, annotate, test every single one of those. Now let's transfer that to an enterprise use case like a power station, where there's literally tens or hundreds of thousands of individual steps that need to be taken from a paper manual or at best a PDF on a tablet, and convert that into what we're all hoping for, which is this either tablet or even better HMD overlays, which step by step guide us through these processes. This is a massive, massive undertaking that not only needs to be done once. This needs to be checked and updated from time to time. And we don't talk enough about how we bridge from an 8-step demo at a booth stand to something realistically which is like 10,000 or 100,000 individual steps. So this is a major, major challenge of deploying from the pilot stage to a true enterprise use case. The next challenge is what I call the tracking problem. So the tracking problem is another one of those conversations which is difficult to have. There's a lot of companies working really hard in computer vision and also in academia right now, but it still remains that there are huge challenges in terms of changing light conditions, changing surfaces, objects which may not be the same from day to day. You might have rusting, you might have oil, dirt accumulating on these objects, and this prevents robust, reliable, augmented reality. So you might find that you get to a workplace and something is damaged, so the structure does not match the wireframe model that your device needs to recognize that object, and then you have to pull out the paper manual anyway. There are other options. You can use things like fiducial markers, so you can stick a marker which is highly visible and easily recognizable by a device's camera to a component, but the question there is, how does that scale? Are we then placing fiducial markers all over every component of a system? And there's questions about scaling there. So, and of course, a problem which Movidius is trying to address is the computational challenges here. So computer vision is incredibly computationally intensive, and we are expecting robust, reliable tracking in devices which are the size of a pair of smart glasses. So there's a lot of challenges here that need to be talked about and need to be addressed, because if you are a enterprise customer and you're not aware of these limitations and how we can bridge these gaps, you're going to be in for a bad time, because the expectation is very, very high and the challenges are significant. So the third challenge is knowledge diffusion. What we're seeing right now is that projects, often pilot rollouts, are siloed into private companies, delivered by private companies and used by private companies. So there's a lot of elements of sensitive intellectual property and private information involved. But some of the sort of the offshoots of this is that key learnings are often not disseminated among the AR community enough. And we all work for for-profit companies, most of us here do, and a lot of startups, and when you have your initial project, maybe you want to publish that really nice white paper or case study showing how incredibly successful your project is, and of course it's human nature to sweep some of the challenges under the rug. But the offshoot is that we're all working independently on the same problems. And so if there's some more transparency in this regard, I think there is a lot of potential to accelerate us solving the tracking problem and the content gap. So the upshoot of this, by promising, through the 1990s up to the HoloLens, by promising the potential of augmented reality, which I think that is pretty well established now, we keep promising stuff like this, this ubiquitous world of seamless, reliable, useful, and rich augmented reality. But in practice, more often than not, we end up delivering this, which is, I'm sure you guys can recognize this is a screenshot from Google Glass. And there is tremendous amount of risk here. There are examples in the past where we have, from a technology standpoint, overpromised what we can actually deliver prematurely. If you look at the AI winter in the sort of 60s and 70s, and the VR in the early 1990s, is a tremendous amount of excitement, and companies were promising that they were going to deliver things which maybe they were a couple of years away from in reality, and people got burned. I mean, virtual reality's only really had a resurgence in the last 12, 24 months. So we have to be careful here. But I think that there is some very legitimate reasons why we should be optimistic. And if I wasn't optimistic, I wouldn't be here today. So we're optimistic because there are companies now attacking these challenges, and they're talking about them. If you go out onto the show floor today, you will see them. There are companies like Scope AR and Ngrain and SAP. We're not affiliated with any of these guys, by the way. They're talking about the content gap, and they're developing systems which are bridging the content gap, taking existing CAD models or documentation and building semi-autonomous ways to author these really cool step-by-step augmented reality worker assistant tools without a lot of manual labor and manual authoring. There are companies, like Google and Apple, Microsoft, who have immense computer vision teams, and they are addressing the tracking problem, along with tons of startups who are also sort of in various ways attacking various elements of computer vision. They're trying to solve this. A great example is Google Tango, right? So even the earliest hardware a few years ago, they put more mature algorithms, novel sensors like 3D depth sensing cameras, time-of-flight cameras, into phone hardware, and that was just the first step. So we are seeing movement forward in terms of addressing these problems and also more discussion of it. And lastly, I think that concept videos are increasingly out, and live demos are in, and I think that's fantastic. I think we're all guilty of overly flashy concept videos which sort of blur the lines between what we're able to deliver versus what we hope to deliver in the future. If you look at just the last few months, you're seeing companies like Meta, Magic Leap, I think they were the first to do this. This great statement which is shot directly through our hardware. So we're finally able to really manage expectations in an exciting way. Even Microsoft, who were accused of sort of maybe faking some of their footage in the initial HoloLens videos, they've started to be more transparent and address the fact that there isn't a perfect field of view in their headsets. So I think this is a great step forward because in terms of expectations management, investors, customers, any kind of stakeholder knows what they'll be able to obtain within the next 6 to 12 months. And we're not promising something which is only going to be available after we solve some major problems in optics or computer vision, and so on and so forth. So I think that what we should remember is that the case for enterprise augmented reality has been made. We've demonstrated there is value here, but what we must do now is be honest with ourselves and talk about the challenges that we need to overcome to deliver on the promises that we've made to our stakeholders. And that means looking at ourselves and asking ourselves whether we're making an enterprise pivot in some cases, or whether what we're doing is really an enterprise cop-out. Thanks very much.